Yo, everyone, welcome back to the Techish podcast, your favorite tech and pop culture show where we break down the best of both the tech and pop culture news. It's me, Michael Bahane, and I am joined with
Abadesi of Hustle Crew.
Hustle Crew in the house. All right, cool. We've got to talk about the freak offs, the baby oil. Before I told you that we won't stop, Mr. P. Diddy himself,
He was not stopping.
He has not stopped. And to be fair, they might have stopped him now for real because he could spend the rest of his life in jail. So he's facing a minimum of 15 years in prison.
Wow.
Racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, transportation to engage in prostitution. And this goes all the way back to 2008. I remember we talked about this when I think the videotape of Cassie being hurt by him went out. And we basically said, like, you know, hip hop's having its Me Too moment, whatever. What's your thoughts on this? Diddy, hip hop Epstein, like what comes to mind when you see this kind of disaster?
Damn. I think it's kind of terrifying to me, especially as a woman in patriarchy, to kind of realize how many violent, aggressive, powerful men being operating as bad actors in their industries knowingly to many people. You know, one of the accounts that I read was like the editor of like Vibe magazine, you know, these like big hip hop magazines of the night.
Yep.
And she was saying that, you know, she did this amazing shoot with Diddy, an amazing interview, like cover story. This is like peak of Bad Boy. I'm pretty sure I read this in the New York Times. And then when the piece came out, there was like something in it that Diddy didn't like. He stormed her office, literally made a death threat against her. Her staff had to hide her in the building for fear of her life because they showed up, weapons up, all that kind of stuff. And she was sharing this account as the allegations came out, almost kind of saying how, you know, even after that, she still had to see him at things like the Source Awards or see him on the red carpet and act like it was all okay. And her whole office saw that happen. And, you know, I work in the tech industry and I've been in the presence of known predators, known abusers. And, you know, someone will make a joke or, you know, lean in and everyone's backing away because, you know, you shouldn't let yourself be in a situation where that's going to happen. But why is the responsibility everyone else to avoid getting sucked into the web of these bad actors when the responsibility should be on the systems designed to protect us, put these bad actors behind bars? Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, so there's another great story, not great, interesting story by Techish, the kind of legendary black journalist. And he basically said that he got an internship for his little cousin to work with Diddy. And it was a male cousin. And basically Diddy essentially propositioned him after about 2 years and said, listen, if you want to carry on, climb the ladder, we've got to basically sleep together. And then obviously the cousin left and Techish was like, what's going on? What happened? Why have you left? It seemed like it was going so well. And then he let him know. And this is many years before it went public. So Techish was like, am I complicit in the fact that I didn't come forward and say something? And he kind of justified it in the sense that it's one anecdotal story.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a pattern. I don't have any evidence. Like, this guy's a very powerful figure within the industry. Like, and that his argument was that sometimes the moment comes where there's a groundswelling and everyone kind of gets this person. But at the same time, it often takes very brave women to stand alone, oftentimes not believe, then eventually there's a cacophony of evidence.
Yeah.
You know, with the whole Cassie thing, until that videotape came out, I think
that was a tipping point, wasn't it?
That was a tipping point, but also most people, especially even within hip hop and just culture and media, was generally just more fascinated by the fact that Diddy very well may be bisexual or gay. And that was the kind of, you know, memes that were going for, like, no Diddy, no Diddy, no. And then until we saw that video, and we were like, rah, this guy's actually a monster, even though it was in written form, in allegations, you know, in whatever. Until we saw that, that's when the culture kind of shifted and said, all right, cool, like something's really, you know, really wrong here. And the feds were biding their time.
Yeah.
And they've got him. And I think it's interesting though, because I still always see that backlash of like, yo, Diddy was going to buy NBC. You know, there's conspiracy theories. We love these conspiracy theories. Like when Bill Cosby got arrested.
To like defend predators, basically, because they've been like loved or adored.
I think there's definitely a protectiveness that we have over black icons. And when we see them lose their shine and get taken down, justifiably so, people are still protective of that because they still see themselves in that, or they looked up to that person that was a hero in a white supremacist system. We were like, that was the one that made it, basically, right? So there was, with Bill Cosby, there was always like, he was going to buy NBC, that's why the system took him out. With Diddy now, it's this whole thing with Diageo, because he had a lawsuit with Diageo, the alcohols company. And it's like, yo, we've got to allow people to be pieces of shit. Some people are just pieces of shit, and it's got nothing to do with, you know, their ethnic background, their heritage, the system of white supremacy. Some people are just horrible people, and we've got to let them face the the consequences. And it doesn't matter if, because the other thing people say is, oh, but the white man gets away with it, and it's like, well, that's not a standard to be held up against. Like, that's not, oh, they get away with it, so therefore we should allow our predators to run around and
I think
hurt our women. Come on, what's going on here?
I think the argument being made is that white supremacy is this system of oppression where white people never have to represent their whole race when they're acting out in the world in whatever way they're acting, whether they are
100%.
a good actor or a bad actor. And I don't mean like a movie star, I just mean like person,
Yeah.
agent, whatever you want to say, individual. And the reality of existing in white supremacy as Black people, as people who are actively facing racism, anti-Blackness, whatever it is, most of it subconscious from the white people with power in our world, is that we do have to show up and be representatives of our race. And like, I'll ask you this, as an entrepreneur, don't you feel the pressure to represent Black men?
Yes and no, but
Because I certainly feel that pressure to represent Black women in tech as founders. It's the way I'm spoken about in the press, this Black female founder, this, that. Whereas, white counterparts who are men, especially, they're just an entrepreneur.
I think with Black women, you're so much more of a unicorn in this space that it's definitely infinitely more pressurizing. I believe it does happen. Don't get twisted. Very often we're featured on lists. Top Black this and whatever. So you feel like, okay, cool. So I completely understand. On a more positive story in terms of like representation, I think we need to balance it out, because that's a very depressing story. And obviously we hope justice is served. Just to clarify that. 35-year-old CEO of Red Lobster is a Nigerian American dude. Your people them.
Represent 1 point to West Africa. What you got, East Africa?
Oh yeah, I know, we're slipping. His surname, how do you say his surname though? It's Damola, and then Ade. Go on, you do it for me, please. I want to do it right.
I'm guessing Adamoleku.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds legit. So he actually was the CEO of PF Chang.
Okay.
Started off with finance, helped them grow to around $1 billion in annual revenue.
Damn.
Red Lobster was struggling now, so Red Lobster went into bankruptcy as recently as this May, actually. So after they've now come out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and they've got this new CEO, and it's this 35-year-old, young brother,
hot shot,
35 hot shot coming through, and yeah, it's just a very heartwarming story. Shout out to him. Hopefully, many more continued success.
A good-looking guy, eligible bachelor. Is he single?
I'm
married, but some people might want to know. I'm an auntie now. I like to matchmake, set people up. I'm just saying, the guy looks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we can make that happen.
Eligible if he is.
We'll do a Techish matchmaking show. But what I wanted to say, what made me laugh though? This is the thing that made me laugh. So on Pocket POCIT, we obviously do like media stories, and we published this story on our Instagram. And there was one of the most liked comments was, oh my God, I'm 35. Why is nobody like offering me these sort of CEO roles, basically,
As if they're just plucking him from obscurity and offering him the job. It don't work like that.
I know, but then what killed me even more? So I said, okay, let me look down the thread. And the very same person who posted that comment also said, I work about 3 hours a week, basically, in terms of like actual output, right? Because there's
a correlation there.
Yeah, there's a correlation there, mate. And I think we've got to understand that, like, that's almost like saying I want to be in the Olympics, but I want to train like once a month. Like in capitalism, the problem with capitalism is that it's a sport that we've all been signed up to without our willing to participate, without us being, giving consent to that. But it is a sport, and there are some people who are going to work day and night and have the opportunities. Obviously, I'm not saying that hard work necessarily means you're going to get this, but this young brother has obviously dedicated himself considerably and made a lot of sacrifices to get to this position. You cannot sit there and say, why do I not have these roles given to me when you're telling me that you're only working 3 hours a week? Like, I'm not one of those people that believes that hard work is the only thing that gets you success, but it definitely is necessary for this. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Calling it a sport is one way to look at it. It's a system of oppression as well. The sport analogy works in the sense of like, once you've got the privilege to participate in it as a sport, right? Because we're also still in a world where like slavery is a thing. People are forced into sex work. People are forced into factory work. Child labor is a thing. People are forced into war as child soldiers. I don't think they would see it as a sport, taking a broader view. But yes, for those who are privileged enough to participate in it as a sport, as an athlete, as I'm sure this person who is commenting on the video says, that is like a good reminder for people. Like, things aren't just handed to you on a plate. And, even this fellow, he had an incredibly privileged education, Damola, like
100%.
Harvard Business School, he got a job at Goldman Sachs. Yes, he had opportunities, but he also like grinded away at those opportunities. Because let's face it, a lot of people go to Harvard Business School and become a nobody, and certainly 100%. Don't become CEO.
At
So
35.
he's truly an exceptional person. But yeah, I think there's a weird thing happening in social media. It's kind of like success porn or something, and like LinkedIn is like a place where a lot of that happens. It's like people obsess over accomplishments and achievements, and you can actually doom scroll a platform like LinkedIn. You can
Mm-hmm.
doom scroll, career talk. You can get into a point where you are so sucked into the comparison game, you have no sense of perspective and you have no sense of security. So I think if someone is feeling like they're not where they want to be career wise, just to protect their own mental health, they should like avoid some of these success stories, because
Mm-hmm.
it's been a horrible job market for most people, whether you've been working 3 hours a week or like 300 hours a week, I don't know, but like, yeah, it's a hard time to look out at achievements and feel good knowing how many people have been like laid off or like interviewing and not getting anything.
100%. Yeah. And don't get it twisted. Like I'm not I'm not making that a complete analogy when I say sport and capitalism. It's just a rough analogy because
Yeah.
I'm talking about people that like, you're looking at the success and the fruits of someone's success.
Yeah.
And then you're saying, oh, why don't I have that? When you know full well, look in the mirror, you ain't grinding like that. Let's keep it absolutely real. I'm not talking about people that have got structural problems and structural impediments and, are born in the bottom class and there's no way for them to get out. I completely understand that. But when you're commenting on an Instagram post about, I want to work 2 hours a week, and then you're looking at that,
Stop
make it make sense.
scrolling. Start working.
Stop scrolling. You know what I mean?
But
Start working, please.
do you believe that self-awareness is equally accessible?
No, and
because I think some people are so
you.
delusional or just so incapable of examining their own strengths and weaknesses. If you read Growth Mindset by Dr. Angela Duckworth, who's a professor of psychology at Stanford. Oh, no, sorry. So Angela Duckworth wrote Grit, didn't she? And Growth Mindset was written by Dr. Carol S. Dweck. But both, West Coast Ivy League university professors writing on the science of success. And both of them touch on, based again on their research, interviewing thousands of people, both successful and less so, that it's this ability to be honest with yourself and be like, I'm really good at that. I'm just not so great at that. I need to practice that. I need to work on that. I need to build my discipline around that. It's like, without that reflection, you're really going to stagnate. And I do think there are some people who are either unwilling to do that reflection or incapable of it.
I completely agree. And I think that's why the whole self-made stuff is very difficult to basically swallow, because even if you are somebody with amazing determination and grit, like what gave you those characteristics? You weren't, you were born with a set of inbuilt characteristics that might have enabled you to become super hardworking, super disciplined. Some people have ADHD and they can't focus on certain things. They have to take medication in order for them to have the level of focus that maybe you're born with. So I completely agree with you. Yeah. And also, listen, the greatest example, if you ever watched those early American Idol, X Factor, Pop Idol, someone's like, I'm going to be a star, I'm going to make it, and they can't hold a note for nothing. And everyone's like, bruh, how have you got this far and not realize that you have no talent?
But the extra layer there is that people around them have lied to them. Their loved ones have let them down. Because, you also need people who love you and trust you to be like, don't post that, okay? It needs a bit more work. So there's like shared delulu happening there. That's not healthy.
Yeah, you know what? You know who's not delulu? Right now, the job market has got most of us out of our delusions about what are the opportunities out there. Because I saw a hilarious tweet where somebody was like, so actually, I'll give them a shout out. Kelsey Hightower. He's on Black Tech Twitter. You'll see him a lot. He basically said, the job market is bad when everybody got their camera turned on during the meeting. I just thought that was nobody's in pajamas. Nobody's in pajamas.
Sitting at a desk on my glasses, just bought glasses, don't even need them. Just gonna show you. Updated the bookshelf, no virtual background. I'm at my local library. I'm plugged into the Matrix. Yeah, that is hilarious. No, do you want to hear something crazy? I was hanging out with a close friend, dear friend, MBA graduate, highly qualified professional, works for a global company. I don't want to give any more detail than that, because once I say the industry, there are only so many companies that dominate it. This is a company that did very well during the pandemic. Like many other companies selling directly to consumers, has faced a rapid decline in revenue. They've done round of layoffs after round of layoffs after round of layoffs. This dear friend is basically ahead of going into like a director level role, wanted to go for a director level role, noticed returning to this open role that the role's been downgraded. but the job title has stayed the same. So because this company can no longer do any more layoffs, the next way to save money, they've downgraded all of the roles down a tier, kept the job titles the same. So you're going to come into a company as an exec, but do the job of a manager. You're going to come into the company as a manager, but do the job of a head of. You're going to come into the company as a head of, but do the job of a director. Like, how crazy is that?
And the pay is going down, basically. The pay's gone down. Yeah, of course. That's mad.
So they literally just changed the job title so they can change the pay, but the responsibilities stay the same.
It's wild. I think I'm always a big believer in just like quitting a job that is not for you and you know, perturbs your spirit. But I've heard from a lot of people, this is not job quitting season. Basically, like, you know, don't be, you know, because right now it definitely still is an employer's market. And there is definitely a massive distinction between an employer's market and an employee's market. And I've hired in an employee's market.
Yeah.
And you know, people are just not turning up to the meetings. They're not turning up to their job interviews. They're, you know,
no cameras on.
No cameras on. People come as a job interview, no cameras on. They're like, yeah, what's this role? What's the salary? Nah, I'm not sure about this one. All right, see you later. Bye. It's like, I'm like, what? Funny
Didn't
story.
Someone ghost you?
Multiple times. So what? I don't mind being ghosted on a job interview. I got used to it, actually. But what was hilarious was I had somebody ghost me. And then I think 2 weeks later, they emailed me back and were like, actually, is that role still available? And that's when I actually realized the job market is changing. Because this was maybe last 2023. Because we were still in the kind of bull run around like early 2023. And then eventually it just like, you know, finger snap, all of a sudden, everyone just panicked and there was layoffs and, you know, there was inflation and the market shifted, innit?
House of Cards just collapsed.
The House of Cards just collapsed. And I wish I actually put like some sort of stock market bet basically. Because I was like, okay, I can tell actually the market shifted because the very same person who ghosted me probably realized the opportunities they thought were out there for them are just not out there. And like, I need to come back, humble myself, cap in hand, and ask, can I reapply for this job that I ghosted you on an interview, which is wild. But yeah, listen, it's a funny tweet, man. I'll be honest with you, because like, I think everyone's just realizing that they're in a more precarious position than they realized. And if you've got a cushy tech job, or maybe you're making six figures, now's not the time to be first on the chopping block by not having your camera on and not doing the basics right.
Isn't there also a risk though that like if you do take a job that is, you know, not the job title you aspire for, you're kind of going to get like locked into, like some people are trying to make that jump up in seniority, but the opportunities aren't there because companies are so desperate to cut costs. And I see it in lots of industries as well. No one wants to hire a director anymore or a VP. They just want to hire someone who's like a manager, a senior manager. But you look at the description, you're like, I don't know, it seems like quite a lot of work. So I feel like there's also that risk that if you do go into a role, you're kind of clipping your wings a little bit because the market isn't allowing you to fulfill your ambition or find the role that reflects your seniority, your tenure in the industry.
Yeah, and also I think there's certain categories of roles that just like don't matter anymore. Like I knew people that were like, oh, I want to be a product manager. And I think that role has been hit the hardest during this kind of turn down because it's like in a sort of recessionary environment, you want people who can either build or sell in a brutal way, basically.
Yeah.
And to have somebody whose sole job is just to manage the people that are
facilitate,
building, it's the first thing to get cut, I'll be honest with you. And I feel like to a certain extent, product management was a job title that was invented within Google, within Facebook, these $1 trillion companies where there's a lot of fat that could potentially be trimmed in the down.
You're going to be annoying a lot of our audience, but keep going. Yeah, keep going.
No, but I'm trying to help them because I'm saying to them that if you're a product manager, like maybe you need to think about different positions and different roles. Because I'm sure most of them will tell you that if they looked out there, the job opportunities are not what they once were. Like that's my honest opinion. So yeah,
that makes sense. And to be fair, like if I think of when I worked at Product Hunt, we never had product managers. Like designers spec'd out the products, engineers built them, and then members of the community team like me thought about that go-to-market strategy and that growth thing. And like, so in a way, we were all sharing the role of product manager. There was no one ever officially product manager. If anything, maybe me in the community was like closest to that because I was going between the designers and the engineers to make sure that we were building what we needed for the users. And so I do think maybe you have some truth in that. And, I'm leaning more towards, be that multi-hyphen person. If you've been down a very specific niche and that niche is in decline, it's time to spread your wings, and look at all the other, transferable skills you have, experiences that you have. One day I'm going to be a keynote speaker. The next day I'm going to be an entrepreneur. The next day I'm facilitating a workshop. The next day I'm contributing to an article. Like, this is the reality of working in the 21st century. And like, I'm just embracing it.
Yeah, shout out to that. One last story I think for today. There's now an idea that potentially entrepreneurship is too much of a safe option. So this is hilarious. Harry Stebbings, who's the guy behind 20-Minute VC, he has tweeted something. Let me get the full tweet actually, because what I can see in front of me is cut off. It basically says the biggest problem of venture capital right now is that we have made entrepreneurship too safe a career path. Starting a company should be for the crazy, for the obsessed. Instead, it is for the rational. You leave a top tier university, you raise VC, own your own time, work on something interesting, and pay yourself well. We need to go back to the ones who only do this because they cannot bear to not see their creation into the world. Thoughts, Abadesi?
I'm sorry, but like, this is, to me, is like grade A rage bait. Grade A rage bait. Like,
yeah,
it's the
trolling.
type of content that is specifically created to elicit a reaction, whether positive or negative. And look, he friggin' did it, because now we're talking about him. And he's very much verging into like troll territory, which I see with a lot of content creators who I used to like admire, unequivocally. And now I'm a bit like question mark. Here's my issue with this, okay? First of all, I mean, let's just start with the optics of it. Of course, we have this like white guy being like, starting a company is like so easy and like it's the most rational choice. Okay. He's talking about all of these things like they're just like a shopping list of things that are completely accessible for people. Leave a top tier uni. Check. Raise VC. Check. I mean, last time I checked, Black women are still getting like a few basis points of all the global venture capital funding that exists. Women are still getting a single-digit percentage of it. So, I mean, I think you should have explicitly said it's a rational, accessible choice for men of high privilege from dominant social groups. The other problematic thing, own your own time. Sorry, I don't know a single founder that's raised venture capital funding that is in charge of their own time. The founders I know who've got to deliver returns to investors, as soon as they close one round, are like starting to fundraise the other, writing investors reports, showing up to their dinners, currying their favor, like whatever the, you want to say, like in terms of keeping those relationships warm. I don't think they're in charge of their time at all. And like, I have founder friends who raised funding, company didn't succeed, came out the back of it full of regrets because they've lost their 20s, lost their 30s, nothing to show for it, no money, no relationships, no fun times. So yeah, I just feel like this is a tweet that was just written to like get people to engage with it. What do you think?
I'm going to hard disagree. Can you believe? So I think that based on the people that, so this is the thing, VCs have created the problem. They have created a world where if you go to a certain school, you look a certain way, the door is wide open for you. If you don't fit that criteria, the door is not wide open for you. So now you've created this world where if you go to Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard or Stanford, being a venture-backed founder, it's almost like a graduate scheme because they love you so much that you just go there and you're like, okay, cool. Like I had 10 friends who did it. I can go do it too if you are in that world. So now you've created that pipeline. You're upset that that pipeline is a highly flawed pipeline because those people, I've met those people. He is right. Those people are very much like, I can either go to banking, I can either go into consulting, or I can go into
VC.
Yes, and I don't think VC back founder should be the equivalent of those two things because I agree, entrepreneurship is incredibly risky. It is a bit insane. You should have a passion about probably what you're putting into the world. And it shouldn't just be a career check mark. Oh, should I get an MBA or should I do a startup? So in that world, I agree with what he's saying. But to me, the solution is not, we're going to write off all venture-backed founders or we're going to write off this criteria of founders. We should say, let's open it up and go. You should go and find those people who are obsessed about a problem. Because I speak to those founders all the time. Now that I'm doing a venture scout program where I'm trying to back Black founders. Yeah. The amount of founders that are like, I've had this problem. I want to fix it. I have this problem. And they're not from the top tier universities necessarily. Some of them are, and shout out to them. But a lot of times it's because there's a problem they really want to see fixed. So while I agree with him, but it's a flawed agreement because I agree that in his little world, in his little bubble, that is the case. But come outside your bubble and invest in other founders.
They don't want
those
to,
people
though.
Exist. Yeah,
that's the thing. They want to only invest in them, that meritocracy, and they're annoyed that they can't find that one Stanford, Imperial, Oxbridge grad that's hungry for the next big idea or whatever.
But the thing is, there's a law which basically says that you should never attribute to conspiracy to what that can be attributed to incompetence. And I got that out of my tongue. I got that out of my mouth eventually.
Did you just make that up? You just made that up.
No. It's an actual law which basically says that you shouldn't. A lot of people are prone to think in conspiracy terms, but a lot of times it's just incompetent people. VCs are group thinkers. If the group think is that,
sorry, joking.
Yeah, exactly. No, but VCs are group thinker. But you know, I'm not a VC. I'm just a scout. And I try not to have that group think. Hopefully I can bring some outside perspective, but VCs in general are group thinkers, and in their little bubble, Stanford, Harvard are things that you can checkbox to say that means this person is likely to work.
Pattern matching.
It takes a very brave, individualistic thinking person to say, actually, I'm going to go against the grain. And unfortunately, people that go into VC, a lot of them are not those people. They're just not.
Well, this is what VC is annoying me right now, and I don't need like the creators of the problem to like stand on a platform and be like, hey, look at this problem I created and look how interesting I am for calling out this problem. Fearless Fund has only just come out of the lawsuit when it itself was trying to like change this ecosystem and create funding opportunities for like underrepresented founders. It makes sense that people who have been historically marginalized are in a great position to identify underserved markets, blue ocean strategy, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's now a formula that exists. If you've got the credentials, you can join the program, YC, Entrepreneur First or whatever. You're going to get your check. I've spoken to venture capital funds who are like, you know, we go to the demo days. That's where we write most of our checks. And you're right. It's a conveyor belt. So they've created a conveyor belt for something that is supposed to be for outliers only, and created convenience and comfort around it. And now they're sad that it's so convenient and so comfortable. But this is also about a failure, ultimately, to not acknowledge privilege and systems of oppression. Like if they also could just like open their eyes and realize how they are complicit in creating this conveyor belt, and also how they are complicit in giving into their own biases and unwilling to be anti-racist, anti-sexist, whatever you want to say, they could solve this problem so easily. Look, I'm available.
Yeah.
Hustle Crew, hustlecrew.co. Come on down. I'll train you. I'll teach you.
And you know what the saddest thing? I don't think there was a single prominent VC firm that came out in support of Fearless Fund or even offered any words of solidarity. I think it was completely silent. I didn't see nothing. So yeah, shout out to Fearless Fund and other kind of VC firms.
Other than Arlen Hamilton, Backstage Capital, dear friend of Techish, obviously. But beyond that.
But then let's keep it real. Like Arlen has spoken about this, you know, publicly. Like she's basically been pushed out of VC. Let's be honest. She's been told that you're not going to raise any more money because you're vocal against XYZ people. And, you know, I'm thankful that she came out and said that publicly, because then I wouldn't feel, you know, I feel comfortable saying like, yo, you can't even quote Arlen as a person in VC to back the right things up, because actually she was pushed out of the industry, which is terrible. So, okay, cool. We'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Techish podcast, your favorite tech and pop culture show. Follow us on YouTube, at Techish Pod on Instagram and Twitter if anyone still uses that, and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple. Peace. Bye.
Bye.